Boa tarde a todos. Bem-vindos ao último dia da semana Cripto Mais. O meu nome é Paulo Alves e eu estou aqui hoje com convidados super especiais para falar de regulação de criptomoedas. Eu estou aqui com o Andrés Engler, repórter do CoinDesk para a América Latina, e a Emily Parker, diretora de conteúdo internacional do CoinDesk e ex-consultora do Departamento de Estado americano sobre internet e diplomacia digital. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. So let's start talking about the US maybe. So Emily, please, can you tell us about some of the hot recent regulatory issues in the US right now?
Of course. Thank you so much for having us. So there have been many regulatory debates recently in the United States. I'll just name a few. The first one is that the US, there's been a debate about a major infrastructure bill, and there were several provisions in the infrastructure bill that were related to cryptocurrency. And these provisions were very, very controversial. So there were two really controversial provisions. One had to do with, this is all about taxes, so it's very complicated. I'm not going to get into the details, but basically one provision widened the definition of a broker. It had a very big definition of a broker that included, for example, cryptocurrency miners. And the crypto industry argued that this would make it very difficult for miners in the United States to comply with US tax regulations. And then the other provision in the infrastructure bill, which for some people was actually even more alarming, basically said that if you received more than $10,000 in digital assets, you had to get all sorts of information about the sender, the person who sent you these digital assets. So you needed to get their social security number and report it to authorities. So crypto industry was really mad about this, and they really tried to get it changed, but they did not get it changed. And so that's been a pretty big debate. So I think there's a lot of concern over the infrastructure bill. The other big hot regulatory topic in the United States is around stablecoins. Stablecoins, for example, like Tether, USDT, that's a very big one. US regulators are very nervous about these stablecoins. They think that they're not regulated enough, but there's a lot of debate. Again, how do you regulate these stablecoins without over-regulating these stablecoins? So I'd say those are two of the bigger topics, the infrastructure bill and stablecoin regulation.
Yeah, and I think that those didn't make anything better for the regulation landscape in the US. How do you describe the climate right now in the US around these topics?
That's an interesting point. So the infrastructure bill, though, did not make things better. But actually, some people would argue that it is a good thing, because just the fact that the US government is trying to regulate cryptocurrency is an admission that cryptocurrency is not going away, right? So they're not trying to ban cryptocurrency, they're trying to regulate cryptocurrency. And even if, some people don't agree with the way they're regulating it, the fact that they are regulating it and the fact that people in Washington are debating cryptocurrency is actually a sign of acceptance. So, I think if you look at the bigger picture, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think if you just wanted me to simply describe the mood in the United States about cryptocurrency, I would say it's confusing. It's everybody's kind of arguing about it. A lot of people in Washington don't really understand it. And one very special characteristic about the US is that a lot of cryptocurrency regulations vary depending on what state you're in. So, there's not necessarily a national framework. And also another thing that's confusing about the United States is that you have different agencies that are trying to regulate cryptocurrency, like the SEC, the CFTC, Treasury. In some countries, you have one agency that's really overseeing cryptocurrency, not in the US. So it's definitely a confusing landscape, but some progress is being made.
Yeah, and this is seems not been holding back the usage of crypto, and especially in Latin America as well. Andres, how would you describe the current situation in crypto adoption in the region?
Yes. So first of all, thank you for having us here. I believe that in Latin America, the use of crypto is driven by an imperative need to safeguard purchasing power in the face of high inflation, which is generated nowadays by governments printing a lot of money and the constant political, social, economic crisis that different countries in the region are experiencing. So this process of growing adoption was much at the same time by the appearance of crypto companies providing services in the region, something that didn't exist 5, 6 years ago. I'm referring to both Latin American companies and global companies that have found a huge market in Latin America, such as Binance, for example. So we are seeing a huge adoption of crypto in Latin America. You can see places like Brazil, Argentina, well, Venezuela with an enormous crisis, economic crisis. For example, there crypto has become something normal in the day-to-day business dynamics in the country. Argentines are using a lot of crypto in their country, but you can see some surprising cases. For example, Peru, in the last few months, crypto adoption there has grown more than 600%. And that was largely because the new president, Pedro Castillo, who was elected a few months ago, came in with a very communist message. So people were scared about him. So they start using crypto. You can see something in common in all Latin America is that people have found a financial tool to take economic refuge from the crisis that they have experienced in their history.
Great. And what about El Salvador? How this all of this situation happening there? They are adopting Bitcoin as a currency. How do you see that impacting on the region?
I think that what happened in El Salvador put Latin America in an important place in the global crypto discussion. At the same time, it was like a push for different congresses in the region to start discussing crypto bills or projects. Weeks after El Salvador's announcement, Panama, for example, proposed a bill to promote crypto in the country. Paraguay did something similar with a project that was more oriented to attract miners with low energy prices. Uruguay, for example, is about to discuss in the next month a project to integrate crypto into the payment system. And Brazil has several crypto projects that have to be discussed. So I think that without El Salvador, several of these projects were unthinkable some time ago. And I believe that in the coming months, we may see congresses in the region approving crypto-related bills or discussing them. And at the same time, governments are taking note of crypto, and they are already preparing their own digital currencies with their central banks. Brazil is in that process. Chile said it had formed a team to discuss the topic, and the president of Peru's central bank recently said the country is working on a CBDC, on a currency, digital currency issued by a central bank. So we see many changes that are going on in the region, and that's because of what happened in El Salvador partly.
And Emily, why is every country now pursuing central bank digital currencies?
Yes, so not every country, but quite a lot of countries. So I think there's over 80 countries are at least exploring central bank digital currencies. Each country has its own reason, but I'd say one of the main reasons is that China, started it. China is really far along in developing a central bank digital currency, and I think a lot of countries looked and they said, "Hey, like what are they doing? We don't want to be left behind." I think a central bank digital currency has certain advantages. For example, it can be used internally. Like, say, for example, you have a government and they want to give some sort of aid to the population, perhaps during a pandemic, for example, right? Like a central bank digital currency is an effective way to digitally give that aid to the people, but it also can be used internationally. And so China is the furthest along, but now we have Nigeria, the most recent major country to actually launch a central bank digital currency. The US still hasn't decided whether it's going to do it or not. But yeah, it's a very interesting trend happening.
Well, all of this is happening after many were expecting a crypto winter was coming when China banned crypto mining back in May. Can you talk a little bit about that situation in China right now?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, China has really cracked down. China has always had a very complicated relationship with this industry because China is very pro blockchain technology. It likes the idea of blockchain technology. Again, they're very advanced with the central bank digital currency, but they're nervous about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, decentralized cryptocurrencies, in part because they're worried about speculation. They're worried about ordinary people losing their savings. The mining concern is a little bit different. So, you know, China used to be really kind of the center of mining, and they've cracked down on it for various reasons. One reason actually doesn't really have to do with cryptocurrency itself. It more has to do with energy conservation. And you know, China's worried about energy. They're trying to meet environmental goals. So China's definitely their crackdown has gotten more and more severe. But what's interesting about it is it doesn't really seem to be affecting the global price of Bitcoin. So I think that's actually a very positive side, because I think there was a sign a few years ago where people were worried China was such an important market. If China cracks down on Bitcoin, Bitcoin will collapse. Well, that clearly has not happened.
And how do you see the US taking over as, well, nowadays, maybe the main country where crypto miners went after leaving China right now? What changed and made the crypto miners go there?
That's a great question. That's true. So mining has definitely moved to North America. I mean, what changed mostly is that China cracked down, and I think the U.S. saw an opportunity. I think that's really that simple. But yeah, I didn't expect for the U.S. to become as prominent in cryptocurrency mining as it has become. I guess, you know, yeah, the U.S. saw this, China saw it as a threat, and the U.S. saw it as an opportunity.
Andres, do you see Latin America having a space in this? How does the regulation let people create this, bring crypto mining facilities to Paraguay, for example? Do you see an opportunity there for Latin America?
Yes, sure. Indeed, many Chinese miners went to Paraguay in the last few months. So Paraguay is trying to attract miners with low prices of energy, and at the same time, El Salvador is trying to promote volcanic energy mining. So that's a huge event for Latin America. We have places like Argentina where miners are doing a lot of money, and they are trying to get some regulations because the state is not providing that regulatory environment so they can develop. So you can see a huge development of mining in the region. You have cases like Bitfarms, which is an Argentine born company that is a unicorn, a crypto mining unicorn, which was born here and it's expanding globally. So in Canada, US, Argentina, you have many cases here. And I think that in the next months, we will see new companies coming here.
Do you see these companies going to IPOs, such as in the United States? You have so many different companies raising a lot of money and on the stock market as well. Do you see something like that happening in the Latin America as well?
You mean crypto exchange or
crypto mining companies? Yeah.
I don't see Latin American based companies going public. I mean, Bitfarms is like a strange case, but all the mining companies are early stage up to now. So we need to wait a few years to see how this will develop.
Great. Emily, we see a lot of changes going on today. You say that the fact that the US wants to regulate crypto is a good sign, but what is needed for the big money guys to come into crypto in regulatory manners? What do you see is needed for BlackRock and all the other guys so big as they too come to crypto?
So there are already quite a few big money guys in crypto. That's been one of the causes of the bull run, has been institutional involvement in crypto. But your question, I understand that what you're asking, which is like, how do we get more of them in? And I think the simplest answer is regulatory clarity. So sort of, as I said earlier, like one of the biggest issues with the US is that it's confusing. Like people just don't know what's allowed and what's not allowed and who regulates what. And you know, lack of clarity is just not good for financial markets. So I think in order to get even greater institutional adoption, the regulations just need to be a little bit more clear and predictable.
Well, great, guys. Andres, I just would like to ask you, just to end your conversation, how do you see, I know that you already talked about Brazil, but we see Brazil leading the way in terms of ETF approvals in the stock market. The first Bitcoin ETF was from Brazil. The first crypto ETF in the whole America, in Latin America, was from Brazil. How do you see Brazil, well, look, you're an Argentina guy, how do you see Brazil leading the way in terms of regulation in crypto investments?
That's a great question. I think there are several projects going around. One of them was presented by a deputy. His name is Aurelio Ribeiro. He presented a bill in September, which regulates companies operating in the crypto market and at the same time increased penalties for crypto scams. You have many bills that need to be discussed, but I think that Brazil is leading the way of the regulatory sector. But I think it would be essential to know what the government position on crypto will be in order to see how the ruling party will behave in Congress and what position the opposition will take. But I think that, as you mentioned, the crypto futures are growing a lot, and it is clear that Brazil is leading the way in Latin America. So I think we could see in the future an exponential growth of new listings in the country. But at the same time, it would be interesting to see the relation between the traditional financial world and the crypto world. I think that the recent partnership between Banco Itaú and Mercado Bitcoin to tokenize some assets is an interesting example of those steps. And I think that there will be a strong battle between Bolsa do Brasil and the crypto exchange. Recently, the CEO of Bolsa do Brasil said that exchanges were not properly regulated, and immediately the response of the crypto ecosystem appeared, saying that he was not right. So I think that's something that is just beginning because there is a lot of money at the stake. So I think that a lot of new developments will go there.
Yeah, of course, and I guess we'll talk a lot about this in the future, I hope. Thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Andres. Well, I'm just wrapping up here in Portuguese right now. Lembrando todo mundo que os vídeos da semana estarão disponíveis no canal do InfoMoney. Muito obrigado por participar da semana Cripto Mais. E não deixe de ver a cobertura do InfoMoney, do setor de criptomoedas lá no site. E fiquem ligados que teremos muito mais novidades sobre o assunto muito em breve. Muito obrigado a todos. Tchau, tchau. Bye, bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.